Pokrovsk. Well, taking into account, let's say, those perhaps certain offensive actions aimed at liberating the city from the Russian occupiers, who were able to penetrate, yes, into this settlement, but also accordingly taking into account plans to somehow expand, yes, these pincers that we all saw on the maps of the same, for example, deep state, respectively. Yes, I see that there are certain, let's say, steps in this direction as well, which the defense forces of our state are trying to take.
Well, first of all, I would like to emphasize the most important thing. The defensive operation in Pokrovsk is ongoing. We are really talking about the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration because it is a single entity. This also includes, for example, the possibility for the Mirnohrad garrison to transfer supplies from the Pokrovsk direction, even though every trip through this extremely complicated logistics is, as they say, a feat. Accordingly, the delivery of ammunition, first and foremost, means delivering those essential supplies that provide the resources needed to conduct a defensive operation, both in Mirnorad and likewise, we are talking about the evacuation of our wounded and unfortunately the fallen. That is why, for now, Ukraine has managed and continues to manage to hold back the enemy's advance in this direction. The settlement of Kherson, well known to everyone, is a logistical hub for the defense forces. Let me put it this way. One of the reasons is that, as confirmed by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Syrskyi, Ukraine has managed to establish, let's say, alternative logistical routes that make it possible to continue the defensive operation in the Pokrovsk-Mirnorad agglomeration. Therefore, the operation continues. To the north of Pokrovsk itself and in the northern part of the settlement, the armed forces of Ukraine have full control, as do the defense forces. Because we know that here, as one of the elements of this defensive operation, a corresponding special operation is being carried out by our special forces. First and foremost, we are talking about units of the main intelligence directorate, the Security Service of Ukraine, Special Operations Forces, and other special units that are accordingly clearing these territories, these neighborhoods, these locations of Russian occupiers. We are talking both about Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups and about those Russian soldiers who, through infiltration, the tactic remains the same. The enemy is trying to penetrate the city, especially from the southern part. This is currently the main gateway that the Russians have managed to create in order to move forward. Moreover, today, if we talk about the southern part of Pokrovsk as the location where the Russians are present in significant force, where they are acting very actively, they have managed to establish their own logistics there. In any case, even here in the southern part of Pokrovsk, there are neighborhoods where our units are operating, destroying precisely this logistics network and carrying out certain clearing operations against the Russian personnel who continue to arrive or are trying to keep arriving. Today, we already know that there are approximately plus or minus 300 Russian occupiers constantly present in Pokrovsk, and it's clear that the enemy is trying to constantly replenish the very heavy losses it is suffering. That's why Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups are trying to enter the center of Pokrovsk, where they are being eliminated today. So all these panic-stricken cries, which are also fueled by Russian information attacks claiming that Pokrovsk has fallen, that Pokrovsk is lost, none of this corresponds to reality. No one is saying that everything is fine here. No one is saying that today the defense forces have managed to accomplish all the assigned tasks. The battle continues. Moreover, I would like to emphasize and point out that there are, in fact, a significant number of settlements. Let me specifically name Krasny Lyman, the settlement of Rovnoye, Novoekonomicheskoye, and several others as well, where the ongoing and intense fighting, in my considered opinion, will actually and ultimately determine the future fate and destiny of the city of Pokrovsk, as well as the entire Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration as a whole. This situation is developing rapidly, and its outcome will be crucial for the region. Accordingly, if these gradual steps, yes, I understand that they are associated, among other things, with significant strain on our forces, resources, and logistics. If we manage to carry out these steps, if the decisions being made today by the High Command are implemented, then things will not turn out, to put it mildly, as some expect. Not at all. And today, there is already evidence of this, that things will not go as the Russian occupiers have planned. So it's the one who laughs last who laughs best. I hope that smile will be on our side. So the battle continues, the defensive operation goes on. And once again, I would urge everyone not to be guided by the Russian side's information provocations. The situation is very difficult, extremely difficult, but we must stay strong and we must support the front. This is already an appeal to our rear units, to our home front. Help Pokrovsk, help the entire front.
Absolutely, Sergey, I can only agree with you here. We're not engaging in any kind of bravado or sugarcoating the situation. We're telling it exactly as it is, because being truthful here, at least to me, seems much more, let's say, appropriate, right? So that we can understand the real situation and not live in some world of imaginary victories and made-up advances accordingly. As you rightly said, the situation is extremely difficult. Sergey, just before you, we were talking, and our colleagues, yes, they did reports about how Kherson is living now. Today marks the 3rd anniversary of the liberation of this city from Russian occupation. Accordingly, on November 11th, 2022, the corresponding event took place. I would like you to assess, yes, the situation we currently have around Kherson, taking into account, as we understand it, essentially the same tactics used by the Russian Federation's army, which by any means at its disposal tries to inflict harm on civilian neighborhoods and apartment buildings. And simply using drones, they specifically target perhaps emergency evacuation crews or civilians who continue to live in this city despite the escalation and threats from the Russian occupying army.
Here, as with the previous question, we need the truth. And by the way, General Syrskyi has always called for this and talks about it, that regarding Pokrovsk and other areas of the front, it is necessary to speak the truth so that Ukrainians understand the full complexity and all the hardships, so to speak, that we are bearing today, that the defense forces are bearing in order to realistically assess the situation. Help is needed, including for Kherson, because you are absolutely right. Today is the anniversary of the liberation of our regional center, the hero city of Kherson, from the fascist occupiers, the rashist occupiers. And I was proud to see in your report at the end, there was also our flag, the flag of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, whose units took part in the liberation of the city of Kherson. Most importantly, and I must say this as a resident of Kherson region, though from the left bank, I want to thank the people of Kherson. I want to express my deepest gratitude and bow low to all the residents of Kherson region, both the left and right banks, and to wish all of us Ukrainians that both the left and right banks of the Dnipro will be reunited and together again. That is why, indeed, today we are saying that the battle for Kherson is, in fact, still ongoing. The occupiers have not accepted, and of course could not accept that they lost this battle. They did not leave of their own free will, as they are still trying to portray. They were driven out and quite literally kicked out across our Dnipro to the left bank. Accordingly, this anger that the Russians are now taking out on civilians is just the typical behavior and manner of the Russian occupiers, who make a lot of noise about so-called officers' honor. There they showed the flag again. Officers' honor, which they have never had and still do not have. Today, there really is a war being waged there, first and foremost against the civilian population. And again, we are saying that the reunification of both banks will fix this situation. That's clear, that's logical. The city is fighting, the city is alive today. Moreover, if we talk about the Pridniprovsky direction, and Kherson is always at the epicenter of this direction, the enemy still tries to carry out assault actions every day. The enemy still dreams of retaking the city of Kherson and occupying it again. I'm confident that this will not happen. Today, the defense forces are firmly holding their positions here, preventing the enemy from carrying out assaults, mainly in the island area. Moreover, I can say that full control has now been restored by the armed forces of Ukraine, the defense forces, over some of the islands. This event happened just a few days ago. For now, no one is giving more detailed information, but there are other spokespersons for that. They will speak about it. And most importantly, our Kherson is alive. It lives and it fights. And this is how all of Ukraine should act. It's a difficult direction. Indeed, today, the most important thing is to protect peaceful civilians from the actions of the Russian occupiers coming from the left bank. Again, some good news. In the area of Holopristan, in one of the buildings, or rather, in one of the locations, several UAV crews were destroyed. These were the ones hunting peaceful civilians. So perhaps today it is also important to talk about the good news that